Thank you very much. You could have come down the street, I guess, if I had a studio set up here that was, quality for two people and it wouldn't, interfere. But I'm like, I have this little studio set up and it's barely put together, held up by, toothpicks and bubble gum and, barely here if I were to move anything. So I appreciate you virtually coming from down the street over and joining the talent show. Thank you.
No problem. You are welcome to come to my barn anytime, but my house, the barn is clean. My house, not so clean. So I feel you on that one.
I got to get over to your barn. Maybe introduce yourself and describe this barn to people.
This barn. So I am Jocelyn Gentry. I'm the owner of Gentry Sport Horses. It's a facility that trains eventing and dressage horses in the sports of dressage and 3-day eventing. And so we teach lessons, we train, and we do. That's pretty much the summary of what I do every day.
So what's this barn? I haven't been there. I'm like down the street. I see everything going on. Like, take me inside the barn real quick.
Oh, so the barn. So there's several barns in my facility. We have an indoor riding arena where the magic happens, where we train the horses and we teach. And then we have a big outdoor arena where there's a bit more space and people can kind of snoop in on what we're doing. So if you're interested, come on by, check out the outdoor arena from afar if you want. But and then, we have, how many stalls we have? I think we have 16 stalls, 18 stalls.
Oh, wow.
We have between 16 and 18 stalls. It depends on my mind and what project we're working on, but around 20 horses.
But people are coming in all the time. What are people coming in? Like, I'm sure some of them have horses there. Some of them are working for you, working with you.
Yep.
Who's coming in and out of there?
So people that are coming in and out are either people that are in training with their own horses with me. So every horse that's at my facility has to be in our, what we call our training program. They're interested in showing or getting their horse to a higher level in their own personal training, or they're clients that come in and use our school horses to take lessons on if they don't own a horse. So that's primarily who's coming in and out.
So you said that's where the magic happens. I love that, right? That's one of the things I say when I'm speaking to out in what I do on the day to day. You got to get in here and see where the magic's happening, right? So where did the magic happen for you originally with like horses and this business? Like, where did the magic first happen for you when it came to the beginning of this?
I wouldn't really call it magic. I would call it like teenage defiance. Is how my love of horseback riding, I really feel like happened. I was 5 years old when I started taking riding lessons, and my dad just couldn't stand the idea of me taking horseback riding lessons. He wasn't
really. Why?
My grandfather, Clifford Gatewood is my grandfather. He owned one of the biggest rodeos in the country, the Flying X Rodeo. Yeah, my actual grandfather taught Roy Rogers how to ride.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
That's something. That's a story.
It's pretty wild compared to the sport that I do right now. Total opposite of, cowboy stuff. I do like the sissy, dressage and jumping. I'll admit it, sissy. But but so my dad grew up riding broncs, taking care of horses, He just knew how much work it was, how much money it was, and he just was not interested in having me participate. So the more he said no, the more I was just super into it,
Well, you rebel a little bit now because you're getting after it. You're not doing sissy stuff from what I see on Facebook. I mean, some of the jumps, you're riding around. So maybe you want to describe dressage. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so dressage is the sissy stuff. The big jump, I forgot about that. That's not sissy, but yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much what I do. Yeah. Jump big things that don't fall down when you hit them. So, so dressage is one of the sports that I train. It's essentially the word dressage means training. And a dressage test is pretty much a pattern that horses of various levels they complete them to how obedient they are, right? I guess that's the easiest way to describe what dressage is. And then eventing is the other sport that I train, which incorporates dressage and jumping. So we jump over obstacles, and pretty fun.
So what did you do? What's that?
A little crazy, but pretty fun.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like you did something before this, right? Career-wise?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that?
So my dad wasn't super into the horse career. So he was very adamant that I go into finance or business or be a lawyer or something that makes money. So I had decided that I was going to go into finance, and I was a private wealth manager for Credit Suisse, one of the biggest investment banks in the world. And so I was there for several years before I started this business full time. So it's different.
Yeah, it is. It is. Did you have a fun at Credit Suisse? I mean, did you climb, or did you just kind of hang out?
It's one of those businesses that you absolutely climb. And it was a pretty lucrative career path. But I didn't really feel the passion that I have for what I'm doing now. It was a job, it made great money, but it was a job. So, yeah.
So take us to one of those Manhattan nights when you're thinking like, man, I'm holding something back here, even though I have all this in front of me. All right. Much more than the martini with the 3 blue cheese olives or whatever was there. Right. But you had a lot going on, right? So, but there was something else going on too. So maybe you can tell us about that.
I don't think it was a night that made the decision for me, or, a couple glasses of wine, and
I'm just trying to paint a picture.
And I'm ready for the next, I personally think that the stars had to align for me. And for me, that was Credit Suisse selling off their private bank for North America. And so when Credit Suisse sold off their private bank, I had a decision to make. Either I wanted to go work for another bank, which I was recruited by many other banks, to go work in private wealth management, or I could go a different direction. And I clearly picked the other direction. So,
well, there's a lot of other directions in private wealth management too, right? Like smaller firms. Credit Suisse is a big global firm. I mean, what really drew you, right? I mean, you had a lot of options, a lot of excitement there too. You could have changed it up and reinvented yourself within the same vertical, a little safer.
Totally. I did what I do right now very, very part-time while I was at Credit Suisse. I had a really hard time, I had a really hard time finding. I had 2 really nice show horses. I had a hard time finding an appropriate facility that I felt like I could focus on my job and they take great care of my horses. And so I really struggled with that while I was at Credit Suisse, being able to focus on my job and know that the horses were well taken care of. And so I started my own little private barn while I was at Credit Suisse part-time. So it just kind of took on a life of its own when I left Credit Suisse, and it gave me an opportunity to just blow it up into a full-time thing. So
but a necessity drove you to start doing something on your own.
Totally.
Was that what I heard there?
Yep. Yeah. There's definitely a lack of, I think our business is fantastic in terms of community and just the warmth of our clients and we call them our barn family, our warmth of our people, and the quality of the facility. And I just think that's affordable. There's affordable, such a relative term in our sport. It's a very expensive hobby for people. So I tried to create a place that had all of the things that I'd have people around me that I want to be around me, that's affordable. So, and that's how Gentry Sport Horses happened. So here we are.
So you're obviously good at this stuff, and I think you're pretty able, right? You're one of these people that I think if you put your mind to it, whether it's in finance and climbing the ladder there, or having a successful small business, being a really good rider, a great mother, right, and great wife, whatever it is, I think you're one of these people that's kind of focus driven and you're going to get after it, like a lot of people, right? So Let's go back to this special, unique talent of yours, right? You're a pretty darn good rider, right? So you've been riding for a while. When did you kind of know that you were a good rider? Like, how did you know that that was something, or maybe you're not? I don't know.
I don't know that yet.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about our sport. Really, though, the great thing about our sport is there's some days where you're so humbled and the horses just teach you to know your role, you know, that you don't know everything. And that it's just a really cool facet of what we do, how we envision how good of a rider am I going to be in a year, 5 years? You know, just today, the wind was blowing sideways. You know how windy it was today, cold and windy. And it's days like today where the horses really, they take an opportunity to tell you.
So, tell me a little bit more about that.
You know?
Yeah, I'm interested in that, right? Like, so tell me about that. Like, you have a relationship with these animals that's really unique to a sport, right? I've never had that in really anything I've done other than human beings, right? I'm not an animal person. So, but with your sport and also with your job, right? Maybe.
Right. It's one of the
talk about with really riding in general. Yeah.
It's one of the really cool sports where men and women are both on the same playing field. You know, it's an Olympic sport, dressage and 3-day eventing, and both women and men compete in the same classes, you know, in the same divisions. And I mean, name another sport that does that. I don't know. Is there another sport that does that with men and women competing against each other? I'm not sure.
You know what? I think before we hit live, weren't we talking about wrestling? They might do that. I don't know.
How many chicks are fighting dudes? I don't know about that.
I think they might. I think they might let the girls step up. I think they do. I'm not sure. We'll have to ask Dave.
We need to research this after this podcast.
No, but you're right. That's unique. So does that do anything to draw for the sport? I mean, like,
I mean, not necessarily, but in terms of, you know, what we were talking about before we went live, and like the trajectory of talent and where and monetizing talent and where talent goes. I mean, to be able to not have well, I guess, you know, financially you can always buy a nicer horse, right? But you're competing against your training of your horse versus someone else's training of their horse, right? So whether you're a man, woman, 20 years old, 60 years old, the 20 years old kids compete against the 60-year-old kids. It's a really fascinating dynamic when you show up to a horse show and compete against each other.
Interesting. So when you go to these shows, there's people of all ages and types competing against each other?
So the last show that I was in this weekend, I was in 11th place. I shouldn't be bragging. I was in 11th place. I'm not bragging at all. I really wish I could win once in a while. But I had an Olympian, a few 5-star riders in my division. So here's me, little old Jocelyn Gentry, competing against, you know, multiple Olympic athletes in my sport. You know, you love it when you beat them, but it's hard to beat them. So, you know.
Maybe tell me about what it's like being able to, you know, travel around with Matt and the family, doing all these cool things. Like, that probably has a big payoff, right? Than coming home off the Amtrak, you know, coming down from, you know, I don't mean to paint this picture of what you were doing that may not be true, right? But it's a totally different life, right, than what you were doing before, right? Maybe talk about those benefits and some of the highlights there.
So when I was at Credit Suisse and I would get there at 6:30 in the morning, right? I'm young, I'm in the business, I'm working on, you know, a big Wall Street firm. I get there at 6:30 in the morning to research stocks that I'm going to pitch that day.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it was just a totally different dynamic between how often I would see Matt and, you know, just being able to do laundry, things like you never got to it. And now, I mean, I'm my own boss. So if I want to do laundry on my lunch, you know, I can play with my kid. I can take my kid to, you know, Sky Zone if I decide to cancel a couple. I never do. I never cancel my clients, but once in a while, I can do it, right? I'm my own boss. But it's the work-life balance. I think it's tough when you own your own business, but at the end of the day, I own my own business, and, you know, I created this business so that I could provide for my family and spend more time with my family. So I've really appreciated that, moving over to, training horses as opposed to working in finance. The money was great, but in terms of, work-life balance, it definitely isn't what I have right now. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, and anybody can do this, right? I mean, not necessarily what you're doing specifically. I think this is your unique talent that you're bringing about in a unique way. But we were talking about the talent economy before we came on, right? And
Right.
kind of why I'm doing the talent show. You buying into that? Like, do you think that's true? Do you think
Really don't. I really don't think anybody can do what I do. And I only speaking from, it is so hard. It is so mentally draining sometimes to take your passion and what you love, and this is my hobby too, but it's also how I'm going to put my kid through college. It's also how I put gas in my truck. It's also how I buy groceries for my family. And so I don't have any other hobbies. I'm a one-track kind of chick, So I really delve into what I love, and they're very long days that are both mentally and physically exhausting. And the money is not always, you're not always compensated, from a financial standpoint. But I will say though, the clients that I have now are just so fantastic that a thank you, just a thank you and their gratitude, and them just showing how much they appreciate my talent and, my extra effort it helps make up, the loss of what you're making financially, so.
No, that's important. I mean, that's when and I said that before we got on, right? When you share your talents, magic happens, right? So that's got to be a big part of why you're doing it as well. And I think that's why a lot of people need to just find out what they're passionate about and lean into it, whether it's a side gig, where they're getting Venmo'd a little bit here and there. I think it's going to explode where people are going to, think less about getting a W-2 because there's more opportunity to, maybe not have it be a full-time job, but just to make more money on the side, doing things like this with their passion. So I think people should get more comfortable about leaning into what they're passionate about, or at least finding out what they're passionate about, because you never know when necessity is going to call and the stable's not treating your horses right. I got this weird schedule. I got to get creative, right? And next thing you know, boom, you got something started. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely think though, there's so many different areas in our sport, whether it be like equine massage or, teaching riding lessons or veterinary medicine or, selling saddles, running a tack store. There's so many different areas that I think a lot of people that are not horse people, they just think we're all crazy horse people, right? But I think though that, you might not necessarily be motivated to run a facility like mine, but you could use your passion, your talent for horses to, create your own, equine clothing line, right? If you're into fashion, things like that. I'm certainly not. I brushed my hair just for you today.
You're one track, right?
Yep. That's, I did it just for the big old podcast, but, there's so much for people to tap into. And I think this is only the beginning. I think that there's so much more in the equine industry that's going to get tapped into. We'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know if I have time to do anything else, but I always watch that show, Shark Tank, right? Shark Tank. I come up with ideas, inventions, things I'm passionate about. And
you got any ideas for the people out there? I mean, do you have any big ideas that you would share, that you would pitch to Cuban and Kevin O'Leary in the crowd?
There's the last idea I had. I always figure out ways to shoot them down because they're awful. But I'm going to come up with one, and I'm going to pitch one of these days. I'm going to get on Shark Tank, and I'll thank you for helping me identify, my entrepreneurial talent on the talent show.
Well, listen, it might not be you, right? You're one track. You're doing what you're doing, right? You're trying to get down from 11th and beat these Olympians, right? You're doing what you're doing every day. Maybe it's you sharing your talent and people seeing what you're doing inspires them to, do what's unique to them. Maybe it points them towards the equine industry. Have you ever seen, you've been doing how long have you been doing this, by the way, professionally?
I broke my first horse when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
And once you're compensated for training a horse, you're considered a professional in my sport. So a long time.
So you've been doing this a long time. Do you have any anecdotes that you would share, or any special moments where somebody said, hey, you drew me in, right? Because, when people see people getting after their passion, it almost lights something up in them and gets them to step in where they maybe wouldn't have, right? So did what started out as a random lesson or somebody poking around turn into something because of relationship or something they learned from you?
Right. I think probably if I had an anecdote, it would be to keep the people that are supportive of you around you and keep them close and build on that, right? So obviously when you're 13 years old breaking your first horse, you're not good, right? But I had a few people in my corner that saw some things in me and gave me more opportunities, and to take those mentorship opportunities when you're young and build on that and really be vulnerable to advice, because not everybody really wants to take advice or criticism. And I think that's one of the hard things in my sport is that's what I do for a living. I criticize people for a living, right? And their riding lessons. And telling them how to get better, because you're never perfect when you ride. You've always got to work on getting better. But I think that's probably the anecdote when you're first starting out and you're young and you're trying to develop your talent, is to get the people that are supportive of you and will offer mentorship and milk the most out of that as you can.
How'd you find horses?
My neighbor, her father was an MD, had a very successful practice, and so they were set up to have their little baby girl and their weekly riding lessons, and they asked me to come with them. And my dad was a pilot, my mom was a flight attendant. They made a decent living, but
they're
my neighbor, they're middle class working family, and they worked really hard to give me and my brother opportunities growing up, and we had a great, they provided great opportunities. But to be really good in our sport, you've either got to work really hard or you've got to have some financial help. So I just worked really hard, and here I am.
Amen. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Lean into it, and I think that's inspiring. What's next for the business? Do you have any big plans or anything over the summer, or anything over the horizon visionary you want to share?
So the business, as I see it right now, it's always evolving, and it evolves in my energy levels, my creativity, do I want to do more sales this year, or do I want to stick to more training based, which is, clients that you have, you're comfortable, you set up a schedule, everything is very, predictable. Whereas sales, as sales is not as predictable. You've got to eat what you kill, right? So I think this year I'm ready to take more risks and take on some more sales. And the market is so hot right now. Like real estate is hot. Horse sales, super hot. Riding lesson. Everybody wants to ride because of COVID, because they think it's safe, being outside and things. So I think that's probably the direction that we're going to head in coming this year, is sales. And I've got a couple of my partners over in Ireland that are going to come over and teach some clinics to riders in our area. Yeah, it's really awesome. They've both been on the Irish Olympic team, Michael and Trish Ryan. They're fantastic riders, great people. So you can come on by if you want to audit a riding clinic. But they'll be
fired up about this, the sales growth and real estate. This is exciting.
I wish I had more time, because I think real estate, flipping houses, is so exciting. I think that would be my talent. If it wasn't horses, I would love real estate. That would be my jam.
Hey, you never know, right? The path is not laid out. You never know what the plan is. So
you never know. If you could add 2 more hours in the day, if it could be 26 hours a day instead of 24 hours a day, I would get into real estate. But right now, my plate is full.
Do you watch HGTV when you have a minute?
Oh, all the time. I love it. Chip and Joe.
My favorite and the only ones I'll spend time with are David and it's Love It or Leave
Property
It, Love It or
Brothers.
List It, Love It or List It.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay. That's a good
Yeah,
one. Yeah, that's a good
yeah,
one. I haven't watched that in a
yeah.
while, but yeah,
Oh man,
it's motivating when we just built our house 2 years ago, right?
yeah.
You go through the visions of what do they call that stuff? Shiplap. Everything is shiplap.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, real estate's like for anybody who's creative and who's a builder and who's like type A putting stuff together, like you're like, yeah, I can do that. And then I can sell it and market it. Yeah, I can do this. Real estate's very
Horses are
attractive.
very similar to real estate.
Oh yeah, how so?
I don't like calling it flipping horses because I think there's a negative connotation to that you're just trying to buy a horse to sell and make money. And listen, like this is a business. I'm doing this to make money, but I'm also doing it because I really enjoy teaching horses to be better and to learn different ways to use their body. And so,
Teaching horses.
Yeah, teaching horses. Like, for example, I might get a horse that has never been saddled before, right? No one's ever ridden it. And I have the opportunity to buy it at a low price, train it to be rideable, and then sell it for a higher price and make some money. So very similar to real estate, right? Flipping houses. So.
That's an interesting relationship we build with these animals then. Do people write books on, I'm sure, is there any good books on people who do what you do? That's an interesting relationship to have with the animals and the business
I'm
side
sure
of it.
there's books on selling, but there's plenty of training books out there that talk about classical dressage and 3D eventing. Breaking and riding is a good one. James Wilston is a great author who really spells it out. And if anyone's interested in reading,
I see what you mean though. I see what you mean. How it's like flipping, right? I mean, it's very you get what you put into it, right? So
you hope
like, do you
so.
study the horses? Is it like stocks at all? Is it like picking stocks at all? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it really is. I mean, because I was just gonna say that you get what you put into it, but sometimes not. Sometimes you buy the house with a bad septic tank, right?
Right.
Sometimes you buy the horse.
And that's part of the relationship too. You got to know when to let it go, right? Sell it at a loss, sell it at a break even. How to do all that? I mean,
and I honestly think, like, when it comes to talent, there are far better riders than me in this world. Far better riders, and there's probably far better trainers. But I think that probably where any sort of talent comes into play is like mixing the investment side with the horses, knowing where to position myself to what's my next move, knowing when to get out, when to get in. So
that's it.
Yeah.
We found it. We found it.
Eureka.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for hanging out, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
We're going to have my buddy who's a pilot on next week. He has a similar story as yours. He worked for Vanguard for a number of years and had a dream of being a pilot when everybody, including his father, said, "Don't do that, Brian."
We should have my dad be a special guest with Brian.
Brian's dad and your dad can come on as special guests for like a debrief or a retrospect. That'd be great.
Right. Second generation talent.
Yeah, right. Seriously, thanks a lot. And maybe I'll be knocking on the barn door to check things out someday soon.
Come on over.
Jocelyn, thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah.